Hello, 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 and welcome everyone to our Techspressionism virtual salon. I am your moderator, Davo Bradley, and joining me today is our panel of wonderful artists that like to drop in every now and again. Today's topic that we will be discussing today is mediums or media, or however you wish to discuss that. If you are joining us for the first time, typically how things work around here is we have our discussion topic, and then we have a series of presenters where they will present for 5 to 15 minutes or so, and then we'll have discussion after that presentation about what that presentation was about, like a quick Q&A session, and then we'll move on. And well, we'll see where the conversation takes us. But that being said, I will say during the presentations, if you have any questions or comments, please do save those questions and comments till after presentation is concluded, and keep your mics muted as out of respect for the presenter and everyone else, so that you're not interrupting anyone as the presentation is going on. I'm not sure I'm missing anything else. But let's go ahead and get started. And again, thank you for coming. Do we have, I know I just asked like a minute or so ago, but do we have any volunteers that would like to talk about mediums? Or what mediums that they use, or their significance? I know for a lot of us, one of our primary mediums is electricity, because a lot of us are digital artists. So anyone have anything to talk about with that? I do apologize if there's any kind of delay, because I am multitasking my butt off, or attempting to anyway. No, not a thing.
Could you talk, or somebody else talk a little bit more about the topic? Because I wasn't here when you decided, and it might spur some thoughts for me, because I'm kind of operating in a blank right now. I just need a little.
I too am operating somewhat off of blank, but it's a different kind of blank. So yes, so after our last session, we were chatting and we were talking about, we've kind of talked about a couple of different aspects of the process of art making, and mediums was kind of brought up as like, oh, well, let's talk about that, considering even though a lot of us are, we call ourselves Techspressionists, but we use kind of different mediums as Techspressionists. So how the significance of that, our particular mediums with respect to our craft. Like me specifically, I almost entirely use digital technologies to create. Also, hello, Nina.
Hi, Gabo.
Hi. How's it going?
Okay. The dog is coming around. We saved his leg.
Oh,
I'm back.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So speaking for me, I literally only create like 99.9% of my work is done in a digital format, and I do that mostly because I'm honoring my inner child with that, because I actually started creating digital artwork in MS Paint on Windows 98, however many years ago that was. Can't do the math right now in my head because brain's a little foggy, but I actually found my first experiences with art weren't on like pencil and paper and crayon like some other people, when they're creating as a child, but no, mine was on MS Paint. with an old government issue computer that my father may or may not have stolen from his job. But I remember falling in love with just the versatility of using a digital format to create art, because I could vary the colors however I wanted. I could paint, erase, and modify without having to worry about, oh, well, my marker's running out, or oh, my crayon's going to go away, or I need to sharpen this pencil, or I don't have enough paper, those kinds of things. And naturally, like over as the years went on, I kind of just leaned more and more into the digital format to create. And it's kind of become a natural extension of me. And it's more difficult for me to create with graphite or actual like physical media than it is for me to create digitally these days. Yeah. So,
Yeah, so for me, Davo, I think I think there's a unique element to working digitally, because I also work digitally, but I would consider my medium paper, because I print my work. So I guess, you know, archival digital prints would be my medium, and understanding paper, understanding how big the files need to be depending on how large of an artwork I'm creating, are all very important aspects. And I remember as well in some of our previous discussions and some conversations I've had with Renata, she has mentioned that for her, a lot of her work, her ideal situation would be on a video screen, because you have the illumination of the pixels behind that. So I think that's another aspect. The thing that makes, I think, a lot of this work sometimes feel esoteric is working digitally. How are you viewing the digital format? Is it on a smartphone? Is it on an iPad? Is it on a 72-inch high definition screen? Is it printed work? Is it sculptural? Whatever it might be. So I think that's the challenge when we talk about us being as digital artists. There's more to it than just the work medium in which we're working in.
right. And yeah, I can definitely that's something that was brought to my attention as I got more into creating art to be displayed. And I actually did have to put more thought into, oh, well, how's this actually going to look on this kind of display versus how's this going to look like in print? Because I started offering prints of my work, which was something that I didn't really think about doing before until somebody asked me. It's like, oh, can I have that as a print? And I had never thought about bringing physicality to my work. And I had to figure out, well, you know, how do I want this to look in the physical world versus just on a screen? Because there are elements on a screen that you can utilize that you can't necessarily reproduce in print. Like, I know there's some like exceptionally high contrast works that I did that I'm pretty sure you would not be able to reproduce that that contrast with you printed it on canvas or paper or anything like that. So in my case, physicality is kind of secondary to digital as being the primary viewing experience. So making it for LED screens or LCD screens, that kind of thing.
Well, when I started off with MS Paint, it struck me how light shifted in handling the different colors and whatnot. And initially, in my career as a digital artist, I considered my medium to be light. And I noticed that classic forms showed up often when you poured, quote unquote, poured the pixels onto an electronic canvas, and one of them was, pyramid shapes and whatnot. And as I noticed that, it occurred to me that possibly early architecture, like of the pyramids and other ancient structures, were inspired by the observer's fascination with light. And in that moment, I felt like there was a connection between the dawn of architecture and the dawn of art and what I was witnessing inside the computerized environment. So I considered myself to be a sculptor of light. And that persisted for a certain period of time. And then when I had to deal with the logistics of printing and presentation and putting on an exhibit, doing a show, I had to then consider more textures and the external world experience. And that was quite involved because, back in early on in my career, it wasn't so obvious how you were going to get your artwork out of the computer and into the real world and in front of people. And it took me quite a while to sit down and walk through the logistics of that. And at that point in time, I started seeing my work as being more akin to works on paper as opposed to being a light sculpture, although the light sculpturing remains a significant part of what I do. And I find that actually paint in its own little simplistic way gave you more access to what was going on as the artwork evolved than what you get in Photoshop. It took me a long time to warm up to Photoshop. I prefer,
I still don't get along with Photoshop.
Yeah, Photoshop.
I don't go anywhere near Photoshop.
Yeah, Photoshop, Adobe is very much into money. They like to monetize their ideas. And so they don't really think about folk like us. But I thought that paint was intuitive, Paint had a way of coming up with stuff that I'm only seeing now in artificial intelligence. And in working with paint, I felt like on more than one occasion, paint could feel what it is that I wanted, And then when I transported the bitmap from paint into something like Paint Shop Pro, then the intuitive component really just exploded, and I felt like I was in many ways interacting with the intelligence inside the machine. So the digital media, I believe, gives us an access to a dimensionality that you might not find to be so tangible when you're working directly on paper, So, and it's interesting that, Davo and I and another participant, Marie Harper Nichols, started off with paint.
Yep.
And I'm thinking that maybe that is because paint was an egalitarian move in creating access to creative tools, which Black people have traditionally been excluded from. And I would like to study that further, perhaps survey.
I will definitely say Photoshop was paywalled essentially, right?
Oh, it was, and it still is. It still is. I pay for Photoshop and Lightroom every month,
But that also creates another interesting point of discussion, though, because when we do talk about mediums, and digital is still a very broad term, but the individual software that we use, I think, could also count as its own kind of medium. Yes, because the kinds of things I create with my favorites are Krita, which is available on Windows and Mac of computers, but Procreate is also another piece of software that I use on my iPad specifically, and that's not necessarily readily available, or not available unless you do wonky emulation stuff that I'm not going to get into. But Procreate is a piece of software that's available on iPads that I create a specific kind of work there because the softwares are so different in how they handle user inputs that it's almost like working in a completely different way. It's like the difference between trying to work with watercolor and oil painting. You can't do the same things in watercolor that you could do with oil painting, and vice versa. And I think it's interesting just how that plays out, because whoever programmed these pieces of software, they knew that everything's not going to be the same. The brushes aren't going to interact the same way. The way that you interact with the canvas is going to be the same way. The way they handle layers is going to be kind of similar, but at the end of the day, they're two very distinct mediums as pieces of software. And heck, MS Paint being that first one, it's very, very simplistic with how it handles user input, but it's literally up to the user to kind of make of it what they will, because you can make, even though it's simplistic, doesn't have that as many features. Like, it doesn't have layers, which is kind of a very common feature in a lot of modern softwares now. Doesn't have layers, doesn't have anything like that, but you can still make richly very rich detailed work in MS Paint without having all that fanciness. It's just, it comes down to how you're using it, how you're using that mouse, how you're using that stylus, if you're going to use a stylus in it. Because I think actually a lot of purists for MS Paint will actually, it's like, oh no, I'm not going to use a tablet, I'm just going to use a mouse to create an MS Paint because it feels better. And
the mouse too.
Yeah, and I'm actually in the same boat. Like, if I were to boot up MS Paint today and start playing around with it, I probably would not use my my stylus and my tablet, which I've been using for everything else, because it feels better to me, or for me, to use a mouse in that environment.
Yeah. So I think the medium thing also spills over into the different software platforms that you would utilize for artificial intelligence. You know, I noticed a distinct difference between Night Cafe and DALL-E and Midjourney. They're very, very, very different. Midjourney I couldn't deal with at all.
Right.
And I think that part of that was that Discord interface that they have. Discord is very dark space in my mind. Anyway, sort of like hanging out Star Trek Deep Space Nine, you know, when the Klingons are there, that type of thing. And I warmed up to DALL-E, and I found that the intrinsic bias element was very strong in Night Cafe. And I decided to take that as a challenge and to try and find ways to work around their inability to deal with melanated faces and whatnot. And I came up with some pretty creative solutions to it. But the whole psychological posturing that you have to do with respect to these different platforms because of the environment in which they present themselves is likewise another component of media. You know, because I have to go through a series of thoughts and internal preparations in dealing with artificial intelligence that I did not have to go through with Paint.
Right.
You know, I was just myself with Paint, but with the AI, it's like, you know, it's like being in a different neighborhood, so to speak.
The
Mhm.
neighborhood may not even be on the same planet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's far out, and you never
It's-
know what's behind the thinking
Mhm.
of the construction of the neighborhoods. And
Right.
then there are artistic equivalents of redlining going on that we have to figure our way around as women and figure our way around as people of color and whatnot. And if you want to be egalitarian in your thought processes, you have to be very mindful of how you're going to interact with the materials that are available to us nowadays.
Now, I'd like to call attention to something that it just dawned on me, because I know I opened up the salon with saying that there were going to be presenters, but this has become more or less an open discussion kind of day. So if everyone's fine with us continuing on with that, cool. But it doesn't seem like we're going to have like formal presenters this time around, which I'm okay with that.
Morgan Harper Nichols has an image she wants to share.
Oh, sure.
And
Morgan,
she said relates to, it's a custom image set that she made as a Black woman with AI that she
Yeah.
wants to share. So
Hello.
Morgan, rock on.
I
Well,
Yeah.
was like a silent follower for a while. I always just watch on YouTube, and I was like, oh, maybe I should try to like join in live one time. I tend to get very nervous, but
it's
but
all good.
what you were
So
sharing, I was like,
frankly-
I got to overcome my fear because I think this is relevant. But because when I first found, just with being very digital media minded, when I first found out about AI, I was immediately like, wow, I want to know, like, how can I get my art involved? But it was very closed off and I couldn't figure it out. So I was like, well, I'm going to figure out how to make my own. I'm an artist. I'm not a computer person. So it's been a long journey.
But there are a lot
but
of those in here.
So I've gone on a very, very long journey, and I just wanted to show a screenshot of what I've been working on.
Here.
excellent.
So this is all my original artwork that I painted digitally on my iPad. And I've been working on custom training models to address that very same thing, because I just realized that as a Black woman, like the stuff that I was seeing was not really reflective of me.
It was
So,
gross. It was gross.
yeah, I was like, no,
Your options are hypersexualization or nothing.
Yeah.
or
so-
monsters. Or
Or
Yeah,
that.
exactly. So I started
Mhm.
working with checkpoints. So that's something that you can use with like a local thing. It's called Automatic 111. And I turned the setting up to where it's all my art. So
Mhm.
I'm just generating from my art. And yeah, it's just been a really great. I'm in an MFA program right now, so it's what I'm writing a paper on. So I haven't shared it too much, but I was just like, I felt like it was relevant because that's kind of my hope for generative AI, is that there could be more opportunity for people to generate things that are from more of their experiences as an artist, from their own collections.
Yeah.
So that's
And
kind
that-
of my
Yeah,
interest.
that is exactly the kind of thing that I was hoping that people would eventually get to, because
Mhm. Thank you,
it-
Morgan.
Oh, thank
yeah,
you.
thank you.
Mhm.
And thanks for the platform. I love following along. So
Well, also thank you for coming, and thank you for having the courage to pop up and show your work.
Yeah, it's great work.
Yeah,
Margaret, make sure you come back.
I
Yeah,
will.
that too.
I'm always
And
watching on
show.
YouTube, but I'm always like, I don't know. So
I totally identify with being shy. And then, of course, is the fact that we're mostly a white group, but we're also very inclusive. So it takes
Yeah,
it takes a lot of courage, and I applaud it.
yes, well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Welcome, welcome.
Welcome, 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 welcome.
Yeah.
yeah. We try not to be intimidating here, which I don't think any of us have it in us inherently, but I think maybe it comes across that way because some of us have, I don't know, just by having as much experience collectively as this group has, I guess it can kind of be intimidating to newcomers. Because some of you I know have been in your crafts for a significant amount of time. Not trying to age you or anything, but you've been around for a significant amount of time in your craft. And for newcomers, like say people that have only been around for 5-ish years, give or take, with what they're currently doing, and be like, oh man, I may not have actually thought about my work enough to be able to talk about this like that. But I promise it's not as bad as your mind might be trying to make it out to be.
Right.
But yeah, but so again, thank you for showing up and showing off, actually. So there's that.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I'll talk a little bit. It spurred some thoughts,
Good.
and because I realized that, and I've mentioned these things, some of these things before, that I came to digital in sort of the opposite direction of a lot of people here, because I started making art through film photography and a number of different, like I did painting, watercolor painting, and transfer pieces. So most of my work before 2012 or something like that was all the end product were paper or canvas pieces, and either by using a particular kind of more traditional art tool, photography, or pens and marking kinds of things. And then there was a period that I created a kind of transfer. I used a collage type work where I used a number of different processes to create a layered, which has influenced a lot of my digital work, layered pieces with transfers and pieces on top of it, all that. And then, so mostly my mind before digital always thought of the end product as something you held in your hands. And initially I worked as a gallery director and exhibit designer. So in that period of time when I worked in those places, occasionally there'd be something moving, a video, but not very much. It was all things hanging on the wall. And then, so when I came to digital, I immediately thought I had to produce something that would hang on a wall, because that was my life tradition, is that you make work, you hang it on the wall. So I did these kinds of canvas productions, but then the pandemic happened and things changed, and I stopped doing the hanging on the wall thing. I mean, my job went away that I had. And also I sort of got tired. I got tired of schlepping stuff around because I'd done it for so many years. And so then I realized in the last year or two that things could be projected. I didn't ever think about things being projected before. So my medium has changed from things you hold in your hands to things that are visual and move and are projected out. And simultaneously, I have one collaboration that I'm doing with 14 artists in 9 countries, where we are creating pieces that are hard copy. I'll just show you the edge of something. This is right here by my table. On these boards that are like this size, right here, but we're not supposed to show what we're doing, but here's an edge of a piece. And I find it interesting to every couple of months go into my hard copy studio that I used to work in all the time and make things with my hands. It's a skill set and a consciousness that's different, but I don't know how to explain how it's different, but it is different. I mean, I'm using the same parts of my brain to create a different thing, a different medium, but I'm interacting with my hands and I'm making my hands do different things than this and, using my fingers
Right.
on the digital. I don't use the Apple tool that much, but so it's just it's a different avenue that I've come along to a different place, and now I'm very fascinated with the projecting and seeing things move. I that was so far from anything I ever did in the past. So and it's interesting to go back and forth between digital and hard copy. So that's my experience. I wanted to chime in about things worked for me, and so I bring that with me when I'm a digital artist. I have all of that history, and I've been thinking a lot about this lately because I am older and I'm starting to think about what I want to do with all my work, and maybe I want to do some kind of presentation about the lifetime of my work. So okie doke.
All right. Well, thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
And I think there are certainly elements of your story of how you came to it that some of us definitely can resonate with, because I mean, unless you're like me and your first was digital, you kind of found yourself coming to it in some capacity along the way and trying to reconcile things that you had maybe been taught in traditional sense, that maybe trying to translate that to a more digital format and vice versa, and like trying to get them to interplay with each other in a way that makes sense for you as an artist. Yeah. Oh, we looks like we have. All right, I want to get to. I'm seeing your name again, and is it Leela?
Hi, it's Lila.
Oh my gosh, this is the second time messing up now. Sorry, Lila.
That's okay. That's okay. I was actually just about to leave and go out for a walk, and I'm glad you caught me, because I was afraid that I'd be in a bad signal zone. Yeah, thank you. No, I just wanted to share. I don't mean to be going off topic, but a couple of ladies here mentioned what's going on with AI and all the issues with not being represented. So I just wanted to offer my perspective. So I'm actually originally from India. I've lived in the US. I'm a banker by training. I came to traditional art about 15 years ago, and I actually took a lot of art painting classes at night and weekends. I've just been obsessed with painting. And now fast forward about a year and a half ago, I kind of came into NFTs, and that's how I met Colin and Giovanna and a few people on this, on this Zoom. And what I was recently interviewed, I'm trying to think, it was not for my art on Super Rare. My art is on Super Rare. It's on a few different platforms. I am also now doing a little bit of digital art, combining, my art and I don't have anything to show because I have my sneakers on and I'm just about to head out. But what I wanted to share is that I was asked about my opinion, because I've been in Web3 space, and on LinkedIn people say they call me a thought leader. I always shy away from those terminologies, but they asked me as a woman who's been in the very male dominated world of finance, how I've managed, how I've done pretty well in this learning, coming from a non-art background into traditional painting, and I've pivoted to digital. And the one thing I shared was, as a woman, one of the things they said, well, how have you done so? I'm a managing director of a big Wall Street firm. They're like, how do you, how did you do that? And I said, one of the things was I never I'm an immigrant, first of all, so I never expected there to be, when I look at images on TV, or I look at there to be representation of what I would look like. Right now, 20 years or so later, I see a lot more people, and my heritage is Indian and Portuguese. I'm sorry, I'm not able to show my face up, but it's on my Instagram and it's on LinkedIn, whatever. But the point is that as an immigrant, as a woman in finance, what my philosophy was, I cannot control other people's point of view. I can just do the best that I can, being me and given my skill set. So, and you know, in finance, there is a little bit of a roadmap. And art, there's no roadmap. It's so hard. You're just gonna figure it out. And so I think that, you know, I just worked really hard. I put my head down. I tried to just understand. It was very confusing because when I came here I came to go to graduate school at Columbia. I started out with a psychology degree. Then I realized pretty quickly that I, you know, wanted to get some additional education. I got an MBA in finance. So the point of the story is, and I hope this, you know, my learnings, I'm just trying to share this with you, is my attitude was, you know, I'm just who I am. There's not much representation. There's not much that I can do to change. I think we've come a long way as society, but I just put my head down, tried to make my own way, and that's kind of served me well. So I don't know if that was helpful, but that was how I dealt with it. I didn't have a lot of mentors initially. So now what I'm trying to do is help other women, other people in the journey. So I'm often on Twitter Spaces talking about this, saying, you know what, we're all in this together. How can we help one another? How can we help make this journey a little bit easier for others, you know? Some of us were blessed to be able to figure it out, and who knows, I'm still figuring it out. I think with AI,
I think it's kind of a lifelong kind of thing.
It's lifelong. It's lifelong. But I think part of it was just having a sense of humility and saying, you know, I'm just going to keep learning, and just learning from others, and just do what I can to contribute to society and give back. So I've been giving back, like just through my art and stuff like that. But that was really it, was just trying to have this spirit where, you know, this is difficult. It's I'm not going to solve this. I don't have a whole lot of people who have now there are a lot of Indians in America now, 25 years later. They're, you know, some of their PhD people are heads of companies. They're doing really well. But when I first arrived, I mean, we were all, you know, just learning from each other. So anyway, so I just wanted to share that little piece and story and say, I'm still learning. I'm still doing my best. And, you know, I like to, and that's why I joined this group. I thought what you all are sharing is so generous. It's so wonderful. Maybe sometime I will have the courage to share my art. But thank you. That was it. I just wanted to thank you for doing this, having this venue of where we can all just, you know, share and learn from one another.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And you're 100% correct about, you know, just sharing kind of what our experience are and what we know. This whole subject actually of mediums, it was also kind of in part because someone had expressed a desire to know more about, you know, the software or tools that other artists here were using to create their work. And they just had no idea how many different things were out there that they could, you know, maybe test or play around with in their own work. And we didn't necessarily want to just make it just about software. And it was like, oh, I guess talking about mediums generally should be able to cover that, right? I think.
Yeah, no, this is super helpful. And you know, and like I said, I come from a traditional painting background. So that was why I initially when Colin told me about this, I was like, this is great, because I can, you know, I'd love to learn from you guys who've been doing it for so long. Oops, I realized my hand was up. I'm going to.
Oh, no, it's fine.
But thank you. That was pretty much it.
Yeah,
Just, this is super. Thank you for doing this.
thank you. All right, I can actually lower your hand for you. There
Thank
go.
you. That's
You're
how
welcome.
little I know about technology.
It's all good.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself. Thank you.
All right,
Take
thank
care.
you.
Have a great day.
Enjoy your
Thanks.
walk.
I'm going to go. Thank you. Thank
All right, Sherry.
Hi, everybody. I wasn't even planning on sharing, but in hearing all of this talk, I realized that maybe some of my work or thoughts definitely fit into the idea of medium, because I started out as a ceramic artist. My MFA is in ceramics, and I taught that for many years, ceramic sculpture and pottery. And then in my own work, I switched to photography. So now I would say my medium is photography, but also painting, and even more recently, puzzle making. And I do have some images, if I can pull them up real quick to show you. I showed images from this series called Movement Interrupted about a year ago when I first joined Techspressionism. And I kind of joked then, but it's really true. I'm probably the most low-tech member of the group, because what I am using is the breakdown of technology. I'm photographing my TV screen when it breaks up and pixelates due to uneven reception. And those are the images I'm going to show you, hopefully, in a moment. I don't do them in Photoshop or using any algorithm. I just photograph exactly what I see. Eventually, everything does end up on the computer, just for cropping and such. And in all my other series, everything ends up in Photoshop eventually, and I work on it. But I'm kind of the opposite of what I think some of you were saying, is that for me, everything has to get printed out and everything has to end up on the wall. I mean, for me, this is really important. I don't hardly ever do anything that I just leave on the computer, assuming it's decent, of course. You know, I will print it out, I'll paint with it. Most recently, I'm having some of my images made into actual puzzles. But anyway, so let me try to screen share. And so give me a moment here. Please bear with me. If I can do this, I have it open already and I'm trying to share it. Is anybody seeing anything?
Yep.
You are seeing it? Okay, let me try to then make it larger if possible. And sorry, this is a presentation I'm doing for somewhere else, and so I have it set up for that. Okay, is it big enough for people to see?
Yes.
Okay, so this is called Movement Interrupted. And as I said, I just wait for my TV. I have this old junky television, and it just starts to pixelate all by itself. And it creates all of these little broken up images and these little squares that appear. And the image lasts on the TV only for like a split second. And so I'm set up with my camera. I use a digital camera and I have it on a tripod, and I photograph really quickly so that I can capture these images. And then the ones that really work for me, I have them all printed as dye sublimation on metal, because I feel that that metal substrate using that medium works best with these kind of computer glitches. So I don't even remember the titles of all of them, but when I do remember, I'll tell you. This one's called Overlooking the Bridge. This one is called Competing with Oneself. It's 16 by 20. And these are all, like I said, dye sublimation on metal. This one just got accepted into a show called About Face. This one's called Looking to the Sky. And again, I wish I could say that I create these things, but I don't. I just capture them in that split second, and then they disappear forever. So timing is really important. This one is called Modern Times. And I feel like these little squares that appear kind of show what is happening maybe with our entire environment and our society, that things are sort of breaking up and falling apart, and which is sort of how I'm feeling things are going politically, economically, socially, environmentally. Things are sort of breaking and falling apart, but I try to see the beauty within the chaos, if you can call it that. This one is called Don't Look Back. And some of these images are even just from commercials on TV that just happen to break up in the right way. This one is called Worrying Too Much. I think this was a newscaster. He seemed to be very worried about whatever story he was reporting on. This one's called Swimming Dreams. And I just make up these titles based on how I think this looks, or what I think it's saying, even though this had nothing to do with swimming. I think this was an ad for makeup, but I just create my own titles. This one's called The Conversation. It seemed to be like two young teenage boys discussing something. Can't remember the title on this one. But again, these are things that I feel like the TV is just channeling these images to me, and I'm just there in that right moment to capture them. So I guess the TV is my medium also.
Mm-hmm.
This is a more recent piece. This was a 4th of July parade somewhere back east, and it just seemed to really be breaking apart, which was sort of, I don't know, perfect for 4th of July. This one's called Thinking Too Much. And this actually inspired a young musician here in San Francisco to do a cello piece based on this image.
Oh.
So I was very happy about that. And I just have, I think, one more. And this one was also taken on 4th of July. And again, it just looked like things were falling apart. I think that's it. No, a couple more. This one's called Looking at You. Girl in the Yellow Dress. I guess I do remember the titles. And this is the last one, Portals. I think it's the last one, Portals.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop my screen sharing. So thank you. I mean, this was kind of a surprise to me. I really was not expecting to present anything.
It's
Oh, that's
wonderful.
Thank you.
great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You're
great work. Thank
A
you.
great audience. If you have any questions,
Yeah. Please feel free to ask them.
do I what? Say that again. I didn't hear you.
Oh, no, I said please feel free to ask them questions.
No questions?
So
Okay,
what was the initial stimulus for you to start capturing the image disintegration that you witnessed on TV?
That's a good question. I remember the exact moment. My husband and I were in London, just on a trip. We were in a junky little hotel. It was raining and they had a terrible little TV and it started to do this. And it was some band, I think some music. And the little TV started to do that. And I had my camera right there and I started photographing it. But I only got like 1 or 2 good photos out of that because I didn't have a tripod set up and I was just doing it, really on the fly. So I kind of put it aside because I never like to just do one piece. I like work in a series.
Mhm.
And then we came home and surprisingly, our TV at home started doing it. So then I thought, oh, okay, maybe I could get a whole series out of it. And so that kind of got me going. But then I started to really think about, well, why am I so interested in these kind of images? And it was sort of like what I said before, that I just kind of have been feeling that, especially politically, that things have just been a mess for the last 4 years and before that.
Yeah.
And, just things we seem to be having a difficult time in our history, not just here in America, but in the whole world. And I think that's what really got it all going.
So would you consider it a Jungian synchronicity?
I believe a lot in synchronicity and coincidence and all that. Yeah, for sure.
Now, I'm not entirely familiar with that term. So could you maybe explain a little bit about what you meant, Renata?
Well, Carl Jung was a leader in psychoanalytic theory.
Mm-hmm.
And he was interested in a phenomenon he called synchronicity, which are a series of events that are acausal. They do not cause each other, but yet they are meaningfully connected. For instance, in Sherry's initial exposure to the glitch phenomenon, you might consider that a coincidence, right? But it caught her interest. So it had a meaning for her, even though at that point in time, the meaning was not well defined. But then when the incident recurred at home, many thousands of miles away from where she initially witnessed it, and it elicited the same response of curiosity and wonder and artistic inspiration in her that caused her to act. You could say that the London incident definitely did not cause what happened in her home, but despite the fact that they are not causally related, they are meaningfully connected in a way that is persistent. Because here now we are witnessing, however many years or months later, we're witnessing a body of work that she has created based on the inspiration that came from this echo type phenomenon between what happened in London and what happened in her home. And it resonates with others who witness it. I remember the book Chinua Achebe wrote called Things Fall Apart, the African author, No Longer at Ease, things like that, where he was talking about colonialism and its deleterious effects on third world cultures and the disintegration of personalities and whatnot that can occur upon adverse impact with colonialism. So our world definitely is fragmented. It always was, I grew up in the Deep South. It was always treacherous. And it was treacherous for my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents and on and on and on. Yep. But now it's starting to spill over to the point where that falling apart is more visible to people who formerly had been untouched by it because it was left uncontrolled, it was unaddressed,
right.
And things like that. Chaos, if you don't put it in check, it spills over, and it just goes on and on, perpetuates itself. So I've noticed a lot of synchronicities in my own life. I don't cling to them too much, but when I saw Sherry's work, it came to mind, especially when I heard her story.
So for my rudimentary understanding of it, it actually seems fairly similar to the idea of almost like a butterfly effect, right?
Well, not quite.
Well, similar.
Yeah, but butterfly effect has a causal component, if I understand it correctly.
Right.
Synchronicity does not have a causal component. They just had they have meanings that resonate between the events. And
And
without
I
having,
think,
oh, go ahead, Michael, you would know. He's
no,
the
no, no.
expert in all this.
no, and I think Vernada's point is that human beings with our cognition can make the connections that are acausal and not link them causally, but see the connections.
Right.
And I think that was something that Jung brought that was very, very fascinating and very important, that not everything has to be linked with a causal effect to see meaning and to
Right.
derive meaning from it. And yeah, I think Vernada bringing that up was really kind of cool. So thanks.
It's cool seeing it. I didn't expect to see synchronicities. I've been studying it more here lately. And now here we go with confronting it in the salon. That's a synchronicity in and of itself.
Yeah. A web of meta connections.
In a way, you know.
It seems that as artists that I think that we are more prone to see it, or I don't know if see is the right word, but sense the synchronicity and allow it to be part of our existence, such as just be an example is just if I'm thinking about something that I might want to be doing, and a few days later I'm riding my bike and I happen to see something and it just connects, and I allow myself to stop, where some people just like they just keep going.
Right.
Allow myself to stop and think, oh, I can stop right now in the middle of all of this and go over and pick that thing off the ground or look at that tree or whatever it is. And so that feels very kind of known to me, that it's, and that I feel like sort of live that sometimes, not all the time, but every once in a while I'll go like, oh, of course I will see this person that I've been thinking about because the blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but I see Michael kind of nodding his head. And
Absolutely.
I feel like that's a really incredible treasure and gift that we have as artistic human beings. I adore that in our and I like having that in my life when I can feel it. And I also wanted to say to Sherry, I'm not sure why, I'm just going to go here, but there's something about your work that reminds me of my own work, in the sense of there's this desire to have something that is kind of known and represented clearly dissipate and turn into something else. And that has been where I've gone quite a bit in my work, where there's an element that I start with, but it transforms into something else. Cynthia does that with her textures and stuff, but your representation of the faces that were glitched and kind of rearranged into a different story felt sort of familiar to me, because I use my own face in a lot of my own work and change it so people can't see what it is, sort of can see what it is, but it becomes a different story. So I felt a relationship to many of the pieces in that way. And I wanted to tell you that.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. I appreciate hearing that. And I'm going to look at your work much more carefully now. You know, I think for me, it started actually way back in ceramics, that this lump of clay or this bag of, gray or brown clay could be made into something both functional and hopefully beautiful. And I think that's where it started for me, about transforming things and making it into something else. yeah, I have to say Clay really has played an important role in my life and has gotten me to this point. So thank you, Susan. I'm going to look at your work more. Thank you.
You're
And I
welcome.
sort of picked up on that same feeling, because what I saw from what you're doing there, taking photographs from a television screen and then the image disappears really quick. It flashed me all the way back to the 1960s with the first computer I ever fooled around with, because it worked very much like that. We get this image up there and then it would be gone. Too quick for us to even photograph it, but you never forgot the image. But it also comes back to something I have mentioned here more than once, and I'm sure all of you are tired of it. It's called taking advantage of chance. It's a major philosophy in the world. And that's exactly what you're doing. And because you are a creative artist, you jumped on it immediately. You recognized it instantly and you mulled over, how can I take advantage of this and turn it into something that I've created on my own? That is at the heart of what a lot of artists do. Now, sort of related to that, in Susan's discussion, I was listening earlier about growing old and the passage of time, which is another thing I've said to many of you before. At my age, my long tradition of doing drawings and paintings on paper and on canvas is very exhausting to me now. It takes a long time. Even when I was young, it still took a long time to do one painting, and it took a couple of years to do a whole series of paintings. Whereas now in the digital age, right here in my studio, right 4 feet from where I am right now, is a pile of crap that I've collected, ephemera stuff that I find all over the place. Okay, I throw it up in the air, it falls down, I look at it. If I like what I see, I grab my camera and I take a photograph of it. If I don't like what I see, I pick it up and throw it up again and let it fall down. And I repeat that process. Then I can sit right down here at this computer and download those images out of the camera into the computer and look at each one and make a decision. Do I like this entire image? Do I like only the left-hand corner, and zoom in and crop that right out? Do I like all of the colors and textures of it that are there, or I don't? Do I alter them? I make all of those decisions within an hour, and I can have a complete series of images all done by the end of the day. For me at my age, that's fantastic. It used to take me a year to have a whole image, a series of images.
Yeah.
So now I'm just left with, okay, you've got this series, what are you going to do with it? Take it to a printer and have it printed out on paper, or as you're doing, have it put out on aluminum, or I can have it put on canvas. It could be on my table here where I photograph it. Most of it's under a square foot, but I can make the decision that it'll be 4 feet by 5 foot on a piece of canvas. And somebody else will technically take care of that for me and deliver it to me. All I have to do is sign it. It's amazing, truly amazing. And I'm grateful that I'm able to do it at my age.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that I can produce a vast array of stuff in 1 year in my life, where it used to take me a lot longer.
Yes. Mhm. I think one of the things that technology really offers us is the chance to curate our experiences. You know, before experience was something that maybe you took a note of at the back of your mind, or maybe journaled about at the end of the day. But technology has made it possible for us to curate in real time as things are going on, and it has made us aware that we are agents of change, not just in the vast expanse of a lifetime, but also on a daily basis and moment by moment. We are agents of change that can decide, who can decide what we're going to think and appreciate as being beautiful or otherwise designate in our experience, and record and share. Even if only we are the only ones who see it again, but we are connected in such a way that we're able to pass it on.
Mhm.
And I think that is so valuable, and it gives us a measure of freedom, such that, Lee, who considers him, he keeps talking about at my age. Well, you ain't that old, number one. But
I've said it before, I was born during World War II.
But that's
Anybody else in here could say that?
yeah,
Any of
but
you?
that ain't, that ain't old in my book. But you have the ability to produce at the speed and capacity of your intellect. Okay. And that's a blessing, because most people, when they become fatigued by processes, they become limited by that fatigue.
I
No.
always try to figure out how can I take advantage of this, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yes.
You know, when you were
interesting that
born
you-
during World War II, like I was, right? As I was growing up, everything was still being rationalized after the war. You had a limit on how much milk you could buy, how much bread you could get,
Mhm,
you know.
mhm,
Clothing was handed down. Little
mhm.
kids like me, there was no store you could go to buy clothes, at least in my family's financial situation, where you could buy
Mhm.
brand new clothes for a little kid. No,
Mhm.
little kid wore the clothes from the kid was a little older
Right.
until they absolutely wore out.
Mhm.
It took quite a long time to get away from thinking like that. And so I was raised with watching adults, every single thing that they handled, they tried to figure out what else they could do with it than the first thing they used it for. How
Mhm.
many more things can I use this thing for?
Right, right.
What else can I do with it? How valuable can it be in my life?
Yeah. That's very valuable thought process.
teaches you
That's
to be
what
resourceful.
yeah, and it builds civilizations, really.
Mhm.
It does. I mean, you don't build a civilization based on throwing things away, disposability and being non-sustainable.
Well, that's how I come up, maybe I can show you. Yeah, there. Can you see that table?
Yeah, that's your work table,
The
isn't
one,
it?
the one right here in front. That's a pile of junk right there.
Mhm.
That's trash. When I walk, I try to walk every day, and I find this stuff laying on the ground. People throw it away. It blows away in the wind. I find it all over the place. I bring it back to the studio. I lay it on this table, and I look at it for who knows how long, and then I start playing around with it. And it may turn into something. It may not.
I like the blue and the yellow fabric. The blue and the yellow fabric. What's that, like netting?
Yellow fabric.
Is the yellow over there?
Yellow. I don't know.
It looks like yellow.
There's
It's
a
all
bunch
the
of
way on the
yellow.
left.
There's a bunch of yellow plastic.
Okay, it's
It may have been
plastic.
plastic.
Okay,
Yep,
Okay.
it's plastic.
okay.
This
It
was
looks kind of
a
like fabric.
was a plastic bag that had some kind of cheap food in it. And
Yeah,
they
okay.
threw the plastic bag away. I don't know
Yeah,
what-
and what's the blue? What's the patch of blue?
Blue, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
that. Uh-huh.
I don't know. I don't know what this came from.
It's fabric.
Some kind of netting that has.
It's a netting. Yeah.
with
Okay.
some kind of little silver things on it. And I don't know what it was originally at all. It was just blowing in the wind when I got it.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
And that's another piece of plastic.
Oh, yeah.
So what do I do with that crap? I play with it, and then
Oh,
I turn it in.
wow.
All of this, everything you see here was from that pile of crap.
Okay.
And in this case, most of it was in my coat pocket when I went to the last trip in Europe. walking through streets in Europe. I picked this stuff up. There's some exceptions, like over here, you see these circles.
Mm-hmm.
Those are actually little tiny rubber bands that were given to me to a little kid, my cousin's daughter. They were asking me about what I do, and I was explaining to them exactly like I am to you. And this little girl came up and she said, well, here, why don't you take this and maybe you can put them into one of your things? And she just dumped them in my hand,
Oh,
my pocket. And
oh,
you see this big blue thing coming across here.
oh, yeah.
That was a little cup that I ate some ice cream out of somewhere in Colmar, France. And it broke real easy. And I just washed it off and stuck it in my pocket. The
Mhm,
big thing that jumps up here like this,
mhm,
that's a shopping bag that was given to me at Carl's department store
mhm.
in Freiburg, Germany. That was also where this big black ring thing, I think it's a cylinder seal or something like that. I found it on the street, in the middle of the street when I crossed the street in Freiburg. It was just laying there. I picked it up, put it in my pocket.
Mhm.
I could go on and on and on. The doilies in the background came from London.
Right.
Yeah, that little red dot thing and this big green circle thing here in green, that came out of a deli bag of food I bought in Hood River, Oregon.
Mhm.
Uh,
Oh,
I often think, some of you know that I write stories, and every once in a while I think I should write a story for each one of these images.
I mean, you
But
could.
it's only interesting to me. I love the fact that I took a piece of garbage that somebody didn't have a second thought about it to throw away, and I turned it into what I think is a beautiful image to look at.
yeah.
That fascinates me. That's
It-
what I mean about taking advantage of chance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What, when I was listening to Lee talk about hand-me-down clothing, I have two parents who they went through the Holocaust in Europe. And after the war, they lived in England where there was a lot of rationing, and then they came to Canada. But to make my point is that when I started working in digital media, I realized I had as much paint to squander as I wished. And I had as much canvas to work on as I wished. And the feeling was just so beautiful when you've gone through art college and university where you have to ration your materials, because if you screw up that canvas, it's pretty expensive to go out and buy another piece. So I just wanted to share my joy, my ecstasy, if you will, that I had when I started painting on a screen.
Yeah.
And I just want to follow up real quickly with that as well, and especially with Lee's beautiful trash art. I've used that inspiration with AI, and I'm actually been working on a whole bunch of images that take household trash in AI and create artwork from it. It has nothing near the richness of Lee's being able to point to those kinds of stories and everything. But just since we've touched on AI earlier, I thought that was a nice connection there. So because Lee, you actually inspired me to think about that with AI. So just thought I'll let you know that.
Is that one of those other was it
Synchronicity.
synchronicities? English is hard sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I don't know. So we had a whole 9 minutes left, folks.
Well, let me follow through with something else that sort of fascinates me. I'd like to know actually how many of you do this. When the whole digital thing came up and I started doing this process, and then these calls for artists would come through, Most of the ones I was getting was for paintings, and I did a lot of painting exhibits, but I suddenly started looking at what might be available for things that were being done digitally, and there wasn't much, but it would come through, and it's progressed quite a bit quickly. When it first started, I would have the print made and frame it and ship that to them, and they would put that in the exhibit. But boy, the last dozen or so exhibits I've been in, they don't want that. They tell me, send us a high res resolution of the image, and we will print it out and frame it where we are and hang it on the wall. And if you want the print, we'll roll it up and mail it back to you. Now, I have mixed emotions about this, because when I was having the print made for me and I had it in my hands, two things: I could approve it or not. And if I approved it, I could sign it to prove that, to show that I had it in my hands and approved of. But doing it this way, having them print it, I don't get to see what it looks like before it gets exhibited. I don't get to see what it looks like framed. Some of these people ask for a certificate of authenticity that they will stick on the back. If it's sold, they'll offer that to the purchaser. Even that bothers me. I'm so old-fashioned that I'm having a hard time getting used to this. People in Europe, they tell me you need to give us a price breakdown for these following sizes. And I'm saying, what are you talking about? They said, well, we'll exhibit this only in one size, but the label is going to say it's available in these following 3 sizes. What's the price for each one of these sizes? I'm like, Jesus, and I'm thinking of limited edition. I usually limit them to 10 prints, and they're saying, okay, that's fine for the big sizes, but to this little size, let's not have a limit on that. If 1,000 people want it, we'll print 1,000 of them. This makes my head swim.
So those are actually all situations and thoughts that I had to deal with very early on when I decided I wanted to start showing my work and selling my work to people, because I had only been working digitally, and then people started expressing interest in buying it, and I had no idea how to go about doing that. And I end up finding a way to partner with a print shop that they'll actually go ahead and print it and then ship it and actually fulfill the order on my behalf. But it was very terrifying for me, because I was like, I'm not seeing the print before it goes off to the recipient. It's like I kind of have to have my fingers crossed that, man, I hope this is going to turn out okay when it gets to the person. And I haven't had any negative experiences so far with that. I guess because the company that I'm using is very good on that. But yeah, I had to think about, it's like, okay, what mediums am I going to offer to people? It's like, am I just going to offer metal? They can apparently print on wood. They can have wood frames. They can have this really high class gigle. And I was like, and again, me having no prior experience with anything outside of digital media, I was like, this sounds good. This sounds good. Yeah. Oh, do you want to show something, Mark? Oh, you're muted, by the way. Sorry. You're saying words. Hold on. You're still muted, Mark.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
There it is. So just saying hello to everyone. You can see my entire screen, all my garbage. And I'm not sure. It's just interesting to see other people who do digital work as well. I want to say I'm a real old timer, that I've been doing this for a long time, and I probably have. But I see I'm probably not alone. But I'm more of a traditional. I mean, I spent 30 years in a darkroom, and then worked in labs and galleries and you name it. And this is, can you all see what's going on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I love what I do. I don't know about you guys, but and I have so much work. So yes, and some interesting questions. I print them. Lately, I've been getting into the aspect of just leaving them digitally when I have shows. But then the thought occurs, like, what happens after you die? If you lose your external hard drives, I mean, that's it. They're gone. How do you, I mean, they're good for the next 10 years. How does it stay for the next 100 years? I mean, if we have such a, high belief within ourselves. So there's a lot of problems, or whatever. So I'm going through. So it's just very nice to have a community with you guys, where we have this thing in common. It's just a lot of times, these are me, by the way. I don't know if you can see them. But I've been doing this for a long time. A lot of what I do occurs with masking. That's the good old like cut out, and you got to be really good at it. Most people aren't. It's a pain in the butt, but it has its rewards. I've probably only been doing this, I would say, for the last 10 years. I also do watercolors. So I am like, when I get sick of doing this. So I don't know. I just thought I'd say hello. It's just really nice to see you all. I don't know if we ever meet up again or how that happens.
Oh,
But,
well, we meet every 2 weeks.
okay.
So,
If you could, someone send me a little letter. Yeah.
yeah, actually, if you go to, I will drop the link to our site.
And I just did a wall projection down in Long Island using After Effects because it's all digital. It's like there's great aspects to digital thing. You could, probably a lot of you don't know After Effects, but it's basically an animation. And so what's fun about them is these are already ripped apart anyways. You're seeing the final. So it's called shredding. And so it's like reverse engineering. So you bring up aspects of it and it slowly builds in an interesting way. But digital is wonderful. It's like digital used to be a dirty word. And now with AI out, I'm like, hell, I'm a fucking digital artist. It's fun. It's just nice to have a community. And the pain is with like, but you're hitting a button. That doesn't count,
Yeah.
And I'm like, hell no, I worked my butt off to make that piece.
And
So
that's kind of the spirit of how this community even came together, because Colin was kind of pushing against the idea that digital art, as properly understood, was something that wasn't deserving or was the same level of respect as like traditional painting or traditional outlets of art. And that's how we started. So it became home to a lot of us.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So good. I don't know. So just say hello and keep it up. It's great. It's great stuff.
Well, glad to have you. And yeah, we meet every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks we host these salons. They go for an hour and a half. And I mean, everyone's welcome to them. I did drop the link in the chat. I'm not sure if you see that or not.
Oh, I don't know if I'm not sure how to get back on. Where am I? Hold on. I kind of lost you. Wait a minute. No. Yeah, I kind of lost you, but I'm over here. Who knows? We're almost done anyways. There we go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So.
All right. So we are right here at the top of the hour for 7. So it's a normal stopping time. We can go for 5 more minutes because we did have a 5-minute delay start, as is the tradition at this point. But did anyone have anything else that they want to say before we wrap things up? Anything they want to contribute? Nay.
Oh, I want to say so. I see something about NFTs, if I might.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have been asking me, and there's so many scammers online, and it's just,
Yes.
and then the recent fall of, and I got asked from my high school friend, he works for Topps Cards, they make the baseball cards, right?
Yeah.
And his boss was like, oh, your friend makes NFTs. And then I started seeing this pattern where these corporations really, they pay people to make and then promote them. And I really saw that the individual artist doesn't have a fucking prayer on earth. You are just like so outranked by these corporations, promoting, building, and it's all a brand. And it's really been my experience. It just, I don't know. Don't waste your time. What do you think about that?
Well, there was actually a whole salon, or multiple salons at this point, actually dedicated to the discussion of NFTs and kind of where we all stand with them. Some of our artists actually do use and create and sell NFTs, and have had varying levels of success. Some people have, sold a piece here and there. Others have sold entire collections. I want to say, what's her name?
Ann Spalter.
Yes, Anne. Jesus Christ, Anne is making probably several killings with her NFTs, and has been for the past like year and a half or so.
But it's not a panacea. You definitely have to be promoted.
Right. And she
that's the
definitely
thing.
had
And
connections, and was able to get connected with people to help her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not this panacea they make it out to be.
It's not.
You'd be making millions overnight. And
No.
it's just it's a fucking crap of shit. I'm sorry. And I'm really open, and I could use the money, no less. But I saw this pattern. There was an article I read that these corporations get behind and promote and build, and they have connections, and it's just this networking thing. And it's really almost impossible for any artist, unless you're very successful and you have all those connections, to do this on your own. You can make the art, but you don't have a prayer, I don't think, so I'm not going to waste my time. You know what I'm saying? And then the stuff that's up there, I mean, the monkey and ape stuff is great. I love it, but it's it's those willing. Even the backbone of this whole thing is just built on hype, and well, it's a business. It really is.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it's the art creation process and the art business process. You can't really divorce the two, but it's very much the case that like your art business is very similar to how your everyday businesses come and go. Like the good majority of everyday businesses, they don't see past a year. A lot of artists don't see profit year over year over year with their work. They'll keep creating though. Like unlike those other business owners, you close shop and it's like, oh, I guess I'm throwing the towel in. But no, artists will keep going until eventually maybe something sticks. And because they're tenacious like that. But I will say it does take a level of savvy, networking, business sense, all that good stuff to make it in that space. And a lot of us, myself included, don't necessarily have that skill set.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is what it is. And I'm sure I could, if I really dedicated myself to trying to learn how to do that, I probably could get there, but I don't have it in me at this current junction to that. And that's the case with a lot of people, I think. And that's cool. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. You too.
But that being said, though, it is now 7:05, so I think we can go ahead and close things out.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure speaking with all of you and having you all here again. We will still have our normal after discussion session that we like to have, our after party, as some people like to call it, where you're free to stick around and just chat about whatever floats your fancy. But that being said, again, thank you all. And this is Davo signing off. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's a wrap.